everyone, and welcome to our Substance live stream. My name is Wes, and I will be your host today. I also have with me Marine, who will be monitoring our chat and collecting questions for our QA at the end of today's session. I am thrilled to have William with me today on the Substance live stream. William is the winner of our Meet Mat 2 contest, and during this stream, he is going to walk us through the creation of his amazing submission. So everyone, I'd like to welcome William. Hey William, how's it going? And thank you for
Hey,
joining me today.
yeah, thanks for having me. It's very exciting. I'm just glad to be here.
Great, great. Hey, why don't we start things off? Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, things like that?
So I mainly work as a motion graphics artist, freelance, and I'm doing indie game development for myself. So uh, starting from uh, mo graphic design, I've moved into motion graphics and now freelance, mainly working on doing my own game development.
Wow,
It's a
that's
yeah,
awesome, man. Yeah, yeah, it's cool, cool. And I think, as I think they were telling me that with your submission, this was kind of one of the first times you've used Substance Painter. Is that right?
it was yeah.
Wow.
I got Substance Painter end of last year, and then I saw the contest, and I thought, well, this is a great way to learn how to use Substance Painter.
Wow, wow, that is quite impressive. And so yeah, so in today's stream, you're going to walk us through just kind of the creation. I know you have a presentation to kind of start us off with, and then right after that, we're going to just dive right into Substance Painter, and you're going to show us some things.
Yeah,
All right, well, great, man. Why don't we just kick it off? Can you go ahead and share your
cool.
screen and
I'll open up my screen.
let's check it out.
Okay, so these are just my contact details. I've recently started a Patreon channel, so if anyone wants to support me for my art, my Instagram and my Twitter are probably the places where I'm more active for anyone who just wants to see some of my stuff. And you can see the HD artwork for my penguin and for this contest is on my ArtStation there. But basically, since I started doing stuff on the internet, I've gone on the nickname Pikkerwijn Man, and that means penguin man in Afrikaans, which is one of the languages in South Africa. Yeah, I'm South African if no one's heard my accent. So I don't know why that started, but the very first render I actually made was of a penguin. So this was in 2005 when I started really getting into digital art, and made this little penguin. I think it was in Blender. And now, once it's 15 years later, I've made my little polar climate scientist penguin, and it's just sort of a follow-up to that, I guess. You can see 15 years of progress.
Yeah, that's an
Um,
awesome story, man. I remember you were telling us that when we were doing the rehearsal, and I thought, ah, that's so incredible, man. Just to see that whole journey. I'm sure, I mean, that was amazing for you. I mean, you look at what you have here and then what you produce today. I mean, I mean, wow, big difference, huh?
I had completely forgotten about this old little render, and then I managed to dig it out of my files.
Yeah.
So if anyone hasn't seen it yet, here is one of the images that I submitted. So the contest involved submitting two 4K renders from specific camera angles. So this was the one, and then this was the next one. So the front and third person sort of view. So then this one is a little render I did in Blender of a little turntable, so you can just sort of see around him. All the other renders you'll see I did in Substance Painter, because that also was actually a requirement for entering. So a lot of people have asked, like in my Instagram and stuff, like to see these layers. So I just made a little GIF so you can quickly see all the different channels that I used. You'll see there's even this little bit of an emission channel, and that's just on the body for lights. But like most of the detail is actually going to be in the height channel. So that was that one just there. But we'll look at all this just now.
Yeah, man, I can't wait till you dive into the actual displacement. I remember when we were kind of talking about this last week. That was just truly amazing to me, like the hand painted details that you added, like for the beak and things like that. It was mind blowing. I mean, look at the detail you see in this image. I mean, like the straps and everything. It's quite astounding.
Thank you. yeah, so I've done just a few zoom ins so you can actually see them proper quality. I did a lot of high detail stuff that you might not actually see on the stream tonight because I've had to reduce the quality of some of the things so it actually runs on my computer on sort of a good pace. But now you can see all these little close-ups. You can see I've even included a little Pukavane Man badge on his front there.
Yeah, nice details.
And a little Dr. Matt climate science. And I'll talk about it later, but all these badges and things are based on my reference images. So yeah, you can see some more channels just zoomed in on the body. And you can see specifically on the high channel, that's actually where almost all the detail comes from. So that's that. And something that I think it's hard to see in the main renders is actually looking at his feet and his little hammer at the bottom. And all his little gear that he's got on the front. He's got a little faux pro. His little walkie-talkie with the Substance logo on it.
Yeah, very nice.
Thanks. So just a little zoom in on the fur, because I think that's a thing that a lot of people have been curious on, is what that actually looks like. And then some of the bit of the goggles, because you don't actually get to see that quite too well from the images. So here are some of those channels on there, and you'll see that most of the detail is coming from the high channel again, and I've got fingerprints and things sitting on the metallic channel, not actually on the roughest channel. That's just because I was doing this as a project for the competition, not really as a production render thing. So just whatever made it look good is what I was doing. So here's just a little bit more of the channels zoomed in on the fur. So you can see there's not actually a whole lot going on there. It's just poking up height and getting a bit of color. And then I've got a bit of scattering on the tips of the fur there. But if you look at the beak, you can see a lot of height detail there. Okay, so let's get into my inspiration. So penguins, as I said at the start, is something I've just loved from a long time. And there's a whole lot of different types of penguins, but they're awesome. So, and I decided I'm going to go with the cutest ones that I could find. So I went with the sort of the baby emperor penguin, because I mean, we've seen them in movies and animations. They're just super cute. So he's actually a little, I guess he's a teenager maybe, I don't know. He wasn't actually always going to be a scientist. So I knew I was wanting to do a penguin, but my first thought was, let's do like an aviator penguin with like World War I aviator goggles and stuff, but it didn't really go anywhere from there. But then a friend of mine reminded me of this old meme of a penguin. Hello, yes, I would like to science, please. And then, what happens if you actually did get to do some science? So you've got the little climate science penguin. So that's where the idea came from. And there's a whole lot of cool stuff I can get from this, all these Antarctic scientists. So like the United States Antarctic Program, which is like one of the biggest ones. And they all got this very iconic sort of polar parka that they wear. And it actually turns out that this parka is a specific brand. So it's Canada Goose Expedition parkas. And they either have Canada Goose logo if it's like civilians getting it, or if you like on an expedition or something, you get your own special badge. So I thought I'd design my own little badge for this. So we've got a Ready to Science Penguin Science Foundation little badge that I made. So it's based on that and the US Antarctic Program one. And you'll see that I got a little bit of hand stitching and stuff that I tried to put on that. But I did take a little bit of liberty and I moved this from the chest and put it on his arm because that was just more visible. Okay, so meet Matt. Matt is this cool model which comes as a template in Substance Painter. And so the contest was texturing this guy up. So it's a 3-part model. It's got the head, the body, and the base. And what really excited me about the contest is when I read, like in the little introductory paragraph, it said, you can use displacement. So I thought, yeah, well, I'm definitely going to use that. It's a new feature, and I think you can do some cool stuff and make some cool images out of that. So one of the things is you've got to render from these 2 views. So this little 3/4 view and the front view. So I went around, made sure that all the time I was looking in Substance Painter from these views, just so my renders would actually look good from these angles. I did do some stuff on the back, but as you can see here, it's not a whole much detail as it's got at the front. But like I just got to focus my efforts for the contest onto the bits that you'll see in the renders. And as I said, I really wanted to focus on displacement because that's, the big cool new thing that you can do. Throughout this, I used a whole lot of materials from Substance Source and Substance Share. So there was actually one here, in particular, the cotton polar fleece, which I think is actually based off of that Canada Goose parka. So it matches perfectly, but it's very flat, smooth, just plain cotton material. So of course I went and changed that a lot.
Yeah. So sorry, William. So yeah, pretty
Yeah.
cool. You're just looking through source and you found something that pretty much matched what you needed, huh?
Yeah, I was quite amazed to actually find that. There's quite a variety of things in there, and miraculously there was perfect material. And yeah, I also used a bunch of other ones there, like this is seatbelt material, which makes the perfect straps on the front. And I used like jeans for little patches and little patchwork things on him. The one thing that I didn't find the exact material for was for the reflective strips that I have on the front. But I did find some sort of reflective, I think they're from like car mirrors or whatever, that I then sort of manipulated and added sort of things on. And then the rest are just sort of like the ground planes and little plastics and a bit of metal for the handle of the hammer. But yeah, I think everyone wants to actually see the model itself. If I can just go into Substance Painter quickly.
Now, William, as you're switching into Substance Painter, I'm actually going to show some of the actual 3D print. So I'm going to run through a slideshow really quick, and you can see that the model, we're actually having that 3D printed, and we were able to get these images back today. So here you're seeing the penguin as it's being 3D printed. So basically kind of coming out of the machine, and yeah, it's the detail is, again, astounding. I mean, it looks, the little bits of snow, and again, here we can see it being printed by the machine. And I think we have another image here. We'll just kind of let this play out. Yeah, this is the head here. This one was awesome. So yeah, the detail, the fur, and how it all came out, man, it's quite awesome. So you will definitely be,
great.
yeah, you're going to be gifted one of these here. So nice to see that being printed now.
So cool.
All right, so I jump back to your screen share, and why don't you take it away? Here we are in Substance Painter.
Okay, so this is just a flat layer of all my things, just flattened all the layers so I can just manipulate it so you can see it better. So this is the full high resolution model that I made. And I think people will enjoy seeing all the different channels and stuff that I've got here. So if I just go, you can see the normals. And just the plain base color channel. It looks a lot different without the displacement, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, displacement just really brings it alive. Yeah, so this is completely. There's no normal information here either, right? Or is there?
Yeah, no, this is just completely flat. But you can see all the little details a lot better with like the color and the dirt and the snow. The face just looks absolutely terrible without Displacement.
Yeah, and one of the new features that we have coming out here pretty soon, I think we talked about it in our last keynote live stream, was that you can now export the tessellated mesh or the displaced mesh out of Substance Painter and get actual geometry. So that'll be pretty cool too. So you could actually export this displaced model with full tessellation and use that for any rendering that you're going to do.
I'm excited for that because when I tried to get it into Blender as it was, I had to match a whole lot of settings and it was quite difficult. So that's exciting. So I think this is a metallic channel. You can see stitching that I've done. And there's all the detail for like fingerprints on the glossiness of the visor over there. You can see some details on the roughness channel for the beak. And all the dirt, little shoelaces. A little zipper and stuff. You can see like little stitching and stuff. Some of it's coming apart on that badge.
So many details. I have to ask. I mean, like, so I guess you would say, was the adding the detail, was that fun, or after a while was it just so tedious? Did you start to feel like, oh, there's so much, I'm never gonna get done, or was it just really fun adding all these little intricate details the whole time?
It was a lot of fun, except I think with some of the stitching, because that became quite a schleff getting around all the little details on the cuffs and stuff. It took quite a while. I think I spent like half a day at least just doing stitching. That's one thing I think last stream you did, there were talks of upcoming feature of painting around an object or doing loops around things.
Yes, it's I don't know what the name of it is, but it's like a curve based tool. So you can you draw a line and it like say for example if you're trying to do the stitching around the cuff of the arm, you draw a line, it'll kind of automatically wrap that stroke around the entire arm. So really good for doing like cylindrical type shapes and things like that.
Yeah, I thought that would have been super useful when I saw it for doing the stitching.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can see a lot of the detail is actually sitting in this height channel. So because I was concentrating all my effort onto just making the displacement look good, that's where a whole lot of this detail is. So you can see where the snow on the visor sort of sits. And all those little bits around the edge here is actually the fur. And I think it's a 32-bit channel. So there's a lot of detail in here that you can't actually see just plain on the screen. Because there's also the bits where it pushes back the face a bit as well. So you can see the buttons and stuff all push up and the stitching in the pockets. I think a lot of the time actually went into painting the fabric, pushing it up and stuff.
Did you start with this height data first? I mean, you've mentioned this is kind of like where most of the detail is. Did you start height first or color, or how did that work?
I think I really wanted to see if I could actually get sort of a penguin looking thing with like a beak and stuff. So I tried to get the face coming out first, just to see if I could actually do it, if the substance displacement was detailed enough and stuff. And it really was. It's super useful.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, so you're actually going to walk us through some of the creation elements of that height here in just a bit as well.
Yes, I'll open up my actual editable file with layers just in a second. I think this is the last channel. So this is just the emissive channel. And you'll see that I made the reflective strips actually have some emission on them so that they actually look like they pushing light back at the viewer. And there's also little lights and stuff that come from the walkie-talkie and the little camera on him. So yeah, I think that's it. Let's go back to the material. So one thing that I messed around with a lot was the these settings for the displacement and how detailed do I want it. So what I settled with for my renders was using the edge length mode and a max length of 1000, which I think looks pretty good. But I actually had started designing it with that edge length at about 2000 or so. And you'll see that it adds a whole lot more detail on here. But what I found is that I couldn't render it because my computer would crash. So I think if anyone's experimenting with like displacement and stuff, if your computer's not amazing, maybe just try lowering it down a little bit. You'll see how it really affects the detail of the fur, because those are just like little 1 pixel displacements and things. But for things like the beak and things, you can go pretty low without it losing too much detail. And if I mess with the scale, you can see just how much it affects the look of this model. Like there's just displacement everywhere. So I think I'm going to try open up that other file quickly.
So William, just as you're doing that, question for your scale. So did you just kind of work up like an arbitrary scale value, and then as you painted height, you were just basing everything off that first value that you came up with? You didn't have to change that often, right? I guess.
No, I set that once and then worked off of that. I just made sure that I could get sort of like the beak pushing out as far as I wanted, and then I left the scale at that point. Okay, I think Substance Painter has crash loading other files. So let me just quickly open up again.
Oh yeah, that's odd. Substance Painter would never crash.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding. Of course it would crash, especially on a live stream. That happens to me like every time I've ever done a demo in my life. The demo usually start off with boom, something crashed. Whether it be software or my computer or whatever. It's just part of the fun, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think people who do digital art will experience these things a lot, especially 3D things. Let me just quickly open up again. Okay, so while that loads, you got any other questions? Okay. Yeah, it was basically all hand painting. The only things that weren't hand painted were like the base shape and text with this badge and the Substance logo. Like everything else was hand painted on here. So this is a little bit back in the creation of the thing. So
William, I think I need you to share your screen, and I was just muted a minute ago, so I was talking. You could hear me, but no one else could.
Oh no.
Yeah, a lot of buttons and switches I'm pulling over here, so it's fine. But here we go, we're back up. So sorry everyone,
Okay.
technical difficulties every stream. It's our trademark.
It's not a stream without problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so is this showing up now?
Yes, it looks good. Everything's good.
Okay. So let me go into the head and I will sort of show the process of creating that height stuff from the start. So I'm just going to hide all the layers and then it should disappear. Oh, another tip, if you're working with displacement, turn off your other model sections because can be quite slow. You'll see with all the layers, my computer is really struggling. Just give that a second to recompute.
So what resolution do you work at your base? Are you at like 2K, or do you even go down to 1K?
When I was actually working on the project, I had it at 4K. For this, at the moment, I've lowered it down to 2K, just so it's not so bad. But you can see how that degrades the details, like the text in the writing there is just gone. So I think I suffered through working at 4K for most of the project, just so I could get all the details.
Yeah, I imagine it would be difficult to be able to, paint the details and know exactly what fidelity you're getting unless you're at that higher resolution.
Yeah, especially with the displacement, because they were all very fine things. So I could probably have lowered it and then just upraised it later, but I wanted to keep all those details. So let me just see, is that all the layers turned off? Let me turn on the 2D and 3D so you can see. So I'm going to switch on to the height channel, I think, so you can just see what I was doing. So I think the first thing I did was just filling it up with a base bit of height there. I'm not sure which was easiest to see, if I have it on the material or the height. So I'm just going to start adding the layers. There you go. So I just tried to get the base shape in, see if I could, push out a basic penguin shape. And then as I went in, I would just refine these things. So I'd add like details on the eyes and the beak, and slowly just build up all these different layers of detail.
So as you had mentioned to me earlier, you just started with this basic shape, and then you started to skew and just layer on top of it to get the final result. So again, it's like starting, something very basic, simple shape, and then adding complexity as you go.
Yeah. So you see it's basically just almost a penguin at this point, but it's not detailed at all. So I was just trying to see what I could do. I kept the little base color of the penguin there so I could get it, but the eyes are just basically circles that push out at the moment. And then I'll just continually refine this as I went. Layer after layer. And some of these layers I probably did later as I sort of detailed things up and put them back into the...
Now, these layers you're adding, are they mainly just like fill layers with height information that you then mask with like paint strokes, or are you using any kind of like procedural layers, or how's that working?
At this point for the face, it was all hand painted. So the only thing that was not the basic brush is when I started doing this fur. So I think there was a brush that sort of looked like one of these basic fur brushes that I just got these little fur details on, but the rest was just using a ordinary standard soft brush and painting these details on. I think just standard brush is what I used for 90% of this. Yeah, and as I went, I just continually added more details, started adding little shapes of the eye. And that's basically the basics of the face all in there. The one thing that did become a problem is when I exported it, it chopped off the tip of the beak because my computer was getting really slow. So I exported the channel maps into a new Substance Painter file. So I didn't, have all these layers slowing down my computer. But I think I used the wrong texture formats and I lost some of the height details. So I had to repaint the entire front of the nose. But I only noticed that was missing like after I'd done like 5 hours of work or something.
Oh wow. So did you change like for your layer settings for the height? Are you said you switched that to 32-bit?
I think, yes, it was using, actually, no, it's a 16-bit float, I think it was. You can tell me if that's what that format is.
Oh, okay.
I think
Yeah.
it's actually the standard one.
Okay.
But when you export it, it's like export your textures. I think I used a PNG, and it just didn't have enough detail. So if you want to actually export super high detailed ones, I would use like a Tarja file or something else. I don't know, maybe a TIFF. Yeah, I
Yes.
think I used.
Yeah, you could use TIFF or EXR, and I think that's one of the things that could be that's a little confusing is that right now the bit depth, like when you select a format, it will export to whatever the highest bit depth that format can support. So we're
Yeah,
starting to add more options to that based on user feedback.
yeah. Well, it wasn't too bad. It was just, I think I didn't check that in time, but more features is always good. So you can see the basics of the fur over here, which was actually just set up with a fill layer that I put, let me just find it, just surprisingly, a fur filter in the height channel. And when I just adjusted the scale, it actually created a fairly detailed looking bit of fur. And because of the way the meat mat model is, it actually gets a little bit of variation in like the direction that the fur sticks out. So it looks fairly realistic without having to do any funny things with just plain displacement. Like if you were using another like 3D program where you wanted to actually groom fur or something, you could probably get better results. But I think it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
so that's also William. I think I asked you before, like when we had our rehearsal, like when you had the displacement for the fur, like you said, it is kind of moving a bit in different direction. Like I would have assumed that it was just going to go straight out. So how did you get it to kind of curve a little bit and move in different directions? What are you
it's
modulating that with?
all I did was make some of the sections uh, push out a little bit further than others. So because of the way the edge curves over there, if I switch to base channel, you see you've got this curve on the edge here. So I made some of the areas stick out further than others, and it gives that appearance that they're coming out in all sorts of different directions. So it's something that I tweaked a lot, like I would use channel adjustments and stuff and just make some areas sort of clumpy and some areas not as long. So you'll get a whole lot more variation. But it's all purely just sticking out straight. You'll see this is one of those where I just sort of tweak the length and the color and just getting more detail on there. But one thing that was needing a lot of filters and stuff was to make sure that the fur doesn't come out from underneath this hood area over here, because otherwise it would sort of poke out through the whole model. So I used a mask with uh, a position filter, I think it was, or position generator, which then I multiplied onto the color selection. So that's using the ID mask just to isolate this fur to come from that area, and then multiplying it with a 3D position that just makes this mask with the fur coming out of only this area. So if I adjust this position thing, you'll see that adjusts where the fur comes out. So that way I didn't have to go in and hand paint all those little details under that little hood area.
Yeah, that's really awesome to be able to make little systems like that too for your masks. So, like you said, you're kind of doing a bit of procedural work, and then letting that hand painting part kind of be the last 20 or 10% to help push your artwork completely to the end.
Yeah. So I would use a lot of the procedural stuff for like the fur, and then for masking specific areas. I think masks is where I used a whole lot of filters. It's really useful. I think next I want to get into Substance Designer.
Yes, I would love to see what you do in Substance Designer. I think that's probably my favorite tool that we have. So it's quite fun.
I'm excited to try it. So you'll see this is that polar cotton fleece, and without any height detail and stuff, it's a cool material, but it's not really exciting. So all the stuff that I would do now is just painting on a whole lot of different little clothy bits and folds. So I like working with a whole lot of layers so that I can always go back and adjust things, so that, if I don't like how I did something, I can just go back and remove it. So I added some stitching on here. This was actually originally part of the World War I pilot helmet, but I kind of liked how the stitches looked, so they remained. That's why I like working with multiple layers, so I can just keep things around.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility, like you said, to make variations, but then also change your mind or mix things up down the road.
Yeah, it's really cool. And you can see here I was sort of pushing back the area where the strap for the goggles went. And then I think this adds it. So this is just the basic strap using, I think, a plastic or a rubber material. And then over time, I just sort of refined these height things. So when I add the goggles over here, you'll see that there are little layers that I add to sort of just smooth the transition from being like cloth to being more sort of just solid plastic and stuff. So one thing that I did adjust specifically for the contest, just to make it look good, is if you look at the front view, if I turn off this layer, you see that you can't actually see the tops of the goggles. So I just added a mask that sort of pushes the top of the goggles so you can see them better from that front view.
And so to create that mask, what did you use? I think you mentioned before it was like a gradient.
I think I used a gradient. Let me just check. Yeah, so I used position gradient, and just added that to the height channel, and then I could easily adjust it, pushing it backwards and forwards and adjusting the height how I wanted. So it didn't look like a triangle, but more like just leaning forwards. And I used a lot of anchor points for like saying I want to use the height data from this point and then use that to create like ambient occlusion for different areas. So I use that just for adding a little bit of contrast in this area around the goggles. I'm not sure if you can see that there. Just a little bit of lighting detail in there.
Yeah, it's just enough subtlety though.
Because this isn't a production thing, you want to have the render with all the details you can get. So I would bake in that ambient occlusion. And you can see now it's starting to slow down because I've got all these layers active. But the last thing is how I did the snow, which was basically using a whole lot of little generators and things. So using ambient occlusion to put snow in certain bits, and I would paint over that at different points and stuff. So that way I could get the snow to sort of fit in the fur and soften bits like that. And then I could always go back and sort of paint out areas and stuff as I wanted. Let me just go to the body and show that there as well. So all the cloth folds and stuff were hand painted. And as I said, like some of those things were procedural with the fur, but basically everything else is just hand painted.
Now, for the hand painting of those folds, did you just use like a standard brush and then paint, or were you also relying on any kind of like alphas that had cloth folds in them? How did that work?
I did find a free set of cloth alphas that I got some basic folds in, but that was just to get like basic shapes and stuff. And then I would sort of go in by hand and paint these details in, so like it would fit better with the directions and stuff where it would sort of naturally move. So for that, I would just use a basic standard brush, and then I would just have height turned on, very soft brush, and I'd basically have like opacity of like 1% or something, and then just paint on a little bit of height over it. So let me just add another layer over here. So what I would do is if I wanted to paint over a specific area, I would sort of eyedrop just to get the height at that point. And then I just sort of turn off color and whatever if I just wanted to paint the height. And then I would paint that with a really low opacity. So as I said, like 1%. And then you see you can get these really subtle changes that you can then go over. So it was a lot of detailed stuff, but working in the displacement, if you don't have this opacity really low, you get very sudden sort of horrible jagged edges and stuff like that. So
So
that's
you're
why I
just kind
use,
of building up the detail, with low opacity and just kind of building it up slowly.
yeah. I think I wanted to start off with less rather than more. So, and then I would sort of emphasize the areas so it would sort of have the details that I wanted. And yeah, because I really wanted to emphasize displacement, some of these things are over exaggerated. Like you'll see the little zipper bits and maybe like the stitching and stuff maybe sticks out more than it would if you would use it somewhere else. But when you look at the render from pretty far away, you don't actually see that it's sort of unrealistic heights. Yeah, so you can see the way I did the fur again over here. This, as I said, is an older file, so this is not the actual final fur that I used, but it's basically the same process of filling in like in the dark areas with ambient occlusion channels. And then like if I didn't want it to be in front of like the badge or something, I would just paint in the masks so you could see the little badge and stuff. So this one, I'll just go backwards with my layers so you can sort of see. So one thing that can be a little bit weird is when you're working with the displacement, you've got to make sure that like your edges don't pull up other areas. So I'd have to go over and like add tweaks to the edges so that they're not pulling up the texture that's not supposed to be pulled up. So that's a little fine detail hand painting that I had to go in there and just check.
Oh,
Like
so for
especially,
the hey, William, sorry for that tweak, like was that what did you have on that layer? Was that a transform, or were you just
I
painting
was just
that
hand
out?
painting.
Oh,
So
okay.
I would sort of like, I wanted it to be the plastic material and I'll just sort of fill in the edge there.
Oh, okay.
Because it's basically like 1 pixel on the edge there of that displacement. Another thing that I found useful is like when you're painting the height channel or just like in general, if you're using the material view and you sort of, let me just open up this layer. if you want to like draw in this area over here, it might not appear actually where you were looking because of the displacement. So you see my cursor is like at that point over there, but because I'm using a high amount of displacement, it sort of appears somewhere else. So I would just switch to the base color, and then, okay, in that case it didn't work. Then just it would sort of paint where I wanted it to. Yeah, let me just go back more layers. So all these things were just hand painted on details. The label was just all hand drawn, all stitchings and writing there. Even these sort of metallic rings and stuff were just hand painted on, because if you use like an alpha on a displaced area, you'll see that you sort of get like, it sticks out at like a weird angle or something. So I got a little reference of where I wanted it to go, and then I would paint on to get the height that I wanted to, because this is actually like on an area that's sort of slanted backwards. So little alpha wouldn't work there. So this is the reflectors that I added. So you'll see that they've got the little emissive layer, which is just a little bit of glow on those, but they're just sort of color adjusted version of that reflector material that I was talking about. And like even these straps and stuff, they were all just hand painted on over. So you can sort of see as I go back, it just returns back to just this basic cloth material, which is right at the bottom. And of course, I added like a bunch of different dirty little grungy layers over there just to get it looking a bit more interesting. You'll see I did little adjustments to the height to get little details on his gloves, so it will sort of look like it's actually part of him and not just stuck on him. And there's like a base little layer of height right at the bottom, which is just roughed out where I wanted things to look. And I think the base was pretty simple. I didn't spend a whole lot of time here. Basically did some footprints, and then in the other version that I'm going to open now, you can see I sort of added little rocks and the little hammer and stuff there on the ground. So this is just fairly simple. It's just materials that I pulled in, and I've just masked out certain areas.
Yeah, I think we noticed that last week that you have like a little ice pick or hammer, and we didn't even know. I mean, it's like all these small details that even you look and you miss, but after this deep dive, we were like, oh wow, there's a hammer there too. That was really cool.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time at just adding in all the little details. Like I'd look at those reference images, what are these guys wearing on them? Like, what do they do? Just try to find things to add to make it as interesting as possible. Hopefully it's not crashing. I'll just give it a moment to load. Because these files on my computer ended up being about 2 gigabytes or something, so it can take a little bit of a while to open up. Okay, so you'll see this is a little bit later, like basically the finished layers with what you saw just now as just the exported and re-imported full layer at the bottom. So if I hide that, you'll see all the little details that I added on after over here. So little tweaks to the fur. And remember I said I needed to add the beak back. And just a lot more detail in the snow and like just tweaks along here, adding a little bit more detail to the edges of the goggles. And you can see the fur here sort of feels sort of more random because I've got the layers that sort of just modulate that a little bit. when my computer decides to load.
And so it looks like you were working on kind of multiple painter files. If I get this right, so you did a set of work and then maybe export the maps and then bring them into a new painter project, kind of in a way of building your own merge layers. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, I was kind of missing the Photoshop merge layer sort of thing. I wouldn't mind like a feature just to like flatten all the layers or something, because my computer was just getting too slow. Mine, it's 10 years old, so I don't think it's a problem with Substance Painter. It's just ancient computer.
Yeah, but we've had a lot of, I think, customers ask about being able to merge layers and things like that. A lot of users, so it's definitely something that we definitely probably need. So I'm sure the team's looking
Oh,
into it.
I look forward to that. So you see like just like little adjustments over here to fur, and since I've got the snow layers showing, when I hide the layers over here, they will sort of adjust to fit and all that. So that was nice to just design the snow, and then anything I changed would sort of just come back and exist. Yeah, so if there's any other details you want me to zoom in on, you'll see that this is where I started adding all the stitching and the patches and stuff. So I added little hand painted, just little, like this guy had been working in Antarctica for 10 years and wearing the same suit or something. He's got
So
his little,
on the patches, like I guess the I forget what you called it, but it was the actual logo patch for this type of jacket, and you kind of made, yeah, that's it. You made that one. So did you kind of designed that yourself, right? And then did you bring that in as an image and then start to use that as maybe a stencil or something in Painter? Or how did you make this come to reality here?
yeah, I used, I created that externally, just like basic shapes of where the penguin is and like the writing, because writing on a curve is a little bit difficult. And then I just used that as a stencil and plopped it on each of the arms. And then I went over and sort of hand painted all this sort of stitching and pushing out certain areas, making it look like fabric. So you'll see when I hide that background fill, you can sort of see those stitches that I added over here. Remember, this is 2K image instead of the 4K that I used. So it's
Oh,
not
wow, yeah,
completely
that's super cool. Yeah, so you're just adding, like, you're not relying on some kind of like filter or anything. You were just hand painting in these stitches to get that detail. That's amazing.
What I did do though is I added like a drop shadow. So that just adds a little bit of detail to the stitches and makes them sort of feel more sort of 3D maybe, even though they are actually displaced. So if I zoom in there, you see that each stitch sort of pushes up a little bit. So I did the same with the South African flag, all the stitching for his pockets, and the writing on his little badges and things over there. So I think it actually looks pretty interesting
Yeah,
without the.
yeah, it's crazy. I'm sorry, did you say earlier that the stitching is what took the most amount of work, or the longest period of time? Was it?
I'm not sure if it was the longest period of time, but it took a really long time. You can see the stitching basically all over him, even on the back. I don't even know why I put all this detail in the back, because you don't see it, because that sits on these little straps that go at the back. So I just tried to make everything as realistic as I could. So stitching, how would you attach this reflector around his arm? So stitching down the center of his arm. There's even stitching on his boots. So the soles of his boots sort of have stitching there as well, even though it's caked under a layer of mud there. I think there's. So the dirt, I used a dirt generator, and then I just sort of masked out certain areas. I think it makes it just look a whole lot more sort of grounded and realistic. And I actually have like multiple layers of snow. So there's sort of fluffy snow that sits on top, and then sort of more icy snow like you just went through, like splashed by water or something. So there's a whole lot of different layers that I did. And you'll see that each one of these has painted on bits and bits that use filters just to get into certain areas. Yeah, I'm not sure what else there is to show.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely inspirational. I'm sitting here and I'm watching you go through this, and I just keep thinking to myself, man, he just started using Substance Painter, and it's blowing my mind. But you know what? Really, it shouldn't, because when I think about art, and I was talking with some coworkers about this earlier. Like, I mean, tools are just tools, and the software just helps you do something. But the software is not important. It's your artistic ability that you have, William, and you can see how a high degree of skill you have, and that just can translate into whatever software, whether it be Substance Painter or any other kind of package. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's your skill set that matters, and I find that to be so inspirational even for myself, because I keep thinking, man, I just need to go back and really focus on traditional skills. Yes, learning software is important for our trade, but you can never abandon those traditional art skills and those instincts and things like that. So, man, this is really inspirational to watch you work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think people just need to just open up their software and sort of mess around. Like, I didn't know what I was doing when I got in here. I would just add a filter and see what it looked good, and I would remember that for later. So just add things, and it just was easy to use, really, I must say, because it was like 3D Photoshop for me.
Yeah, that's also good too, to see you as someone, again, new to Substance, but we're able to get this high level of work within not a very long period of time. So I guess overall, like from I guess once you actually started the work in Painter, I mean, how long did it take?
So I think the contest was about 3-4 weeks, and I sort of heard about it the first week it came out, and I immediately started working on it. So three weeks, maybe like the last week or two, a whole lot of use. So like almost all day for some of that. But yeah, I
Wow.
think you can get up and running and paint it pretty quickly.
So 3 weeks for a new Substance Painter, and you can win a major contest. Awesome. Well, that's awesome, William. And so we're getting just at an hour, so that's good. And if you don't
Okay.
have anything else specific to show, I think what we can do is start to move over into our QA. Like I said, we have
Okay.
Maureen and Vincent from our marketing team has been in the chat, and so I am going to maybe look to start to queue up some of their questions.
Sure.
And I think we could probably just leave maybe your screen share on in case you need to display anything.
Yeah, I'll do that.
All right, let me check what they have here. All right, so going through some questions. Okay, first question here was, how long did it take you to make? So I think we kind of covered that one. It was about 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then like 3 all-nighters the last weekend.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, three all-nighters. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Here's the question. What does the scattering channel do?
So the scattering channel is for subsurface scattering. So that basically, it simulates like the snow in this case will shoot a bit of like light through it. So it's not going to be like completely blocked. So you see I've got that scattering channel just on like wherever I have snow. So if I turn on the snow layer over here, well, anyway, so it just sort of softens up and makes little lights pass through the layers. Let me just see if I... So I'm not sure if you can see that on screen. Is it showing?
Yeah, I'm trying to look. Let's see. I'm looking through like multiple monitors, so the one I'm seeing is like really small, so I can't tell. So you're enabling your scattering parameters?
I'm not sure if you can actually see the difference, but in the actual renders, what it will do is it'll make the snowy bits sort of just softer.
Yeah, I guess you could look at the channel you painted if we want to just not in material view and
Yeah.
just look at your channel. Maybe that. Yeah, you were showing that. So
So I actually also use it on the eyes, just to soften the eyes and the fur on his face, and otherwise just snow.
yeah, and in some stuff for scattering, like I mean, it's very helpful, but it's also it's one of those things. Like I think I had a coworker kind of talk to me about this too. It's kind of like one of those things where like it's like a Photoshop filter. Sometimes people go crazy on it. Like the more subtle it is, the better result you'll get. I think.
Yeah, I don't think you can really see it on the renders even. I added it also to the tips of the fur on the over here. So just like masked out so that the tips would scatter a bit, but I don't think it makes an enormous difference, but maybe just a little enough to make it sort of feel more realistic. And it also makes the snow like where in the shadows appear more blue because like there's blue scattering in there.
Okay, so checking more questions here. So this is a question on your height painting. So like brushes, what I guess it's asking what brush is used when painting height. Did you have a set any alphas? Like how did that work?
Most of it was just using standard or circular alpha, and then, as I said, just lowering the opacity really low and just painting that on there. So it wasn't any special brushes for most of the time. The only thing that I used any special brushes for really was for the stitching, which I used just one of these stitch brushes over here. So I think I just created my own version with a little small stitching thing. But otherwise, yeah, it was just the default brush.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and for stitches in the future, we also have I think it was maybe in the last release we added this, like a paint roller brush. It's similar to like the Alpha Roll in ZBrush. I guess it's not exactly
Oh
that, but
yeah,
it's something like that. But yeah, I just found out about that like 2 or 3 days ago when I was using it to do some stitches. I was like, oh, this is so much better than me trying to build something myself. So yeah, it's funny how you just got to keep up with new stuff that's in software.
yeah, just find all the tools like you didn't even know about it. No, but I enjoy that, like just opening up a tool and just messing around. I think that's the best way to learn any of the stuff. Is just open up, try and draw stuff.
Yeah, definitely. You got to make sure that you're having fun. Okay, so another question here. This one is this question is asking: is this game ready? This fur can be used in a game engine.
I mean, you could probably open it in the game engine, but I don't think it would be the ideal use case.
Yeah, it's definitely not game ready.
No.
Yeah, definitely
Um,
not.
you would have to sort of maybe make sort of textured patches, billboards, or something like that for. You wouldn't use displaced little spikes for your fur. You could definitely get a lot better results with that.
Yeah, I think this is a good example when you think about like what you're doing here is you're building like something like more like concept art. You're doing something for a
Yeah.
rendering, but then also as we've shown earlier, this is 3D printable too. So we were able to take this and have it printed.
Yeah. So I think basically the only thing that wouldn't work in a game is sort of the fur, but anything else you more likely normally just have it all these things modeled out in 3D, and then you would use paint to sort of add detail to that. Like painting this all from scratch is just a requirement for the contest. I think it would actually be a lot easier for someone to create their own thing and then texture it later. I guess that just depends on workflow or what kind of look you're going for.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Parallax displacement and stuff like that might work in a game engine.
Oh yeah, definitely. I guess depending on your shader setup and everything.
Yeah. But this asset's definitely not game ready.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so yeah, moving on, like, checking at some other questions here. So, okay, this one is just, it says more info about. Okay, that was so the question was, that was a really neat trick using the position map to tilt the goggles. Uh, so this person was asking, they still didn't quite understand like what you were doing there. Can you maybe just revisit that a little bit more?
Not sure if that's in this file at the moment, but what I would do is I basically created like a full layer. Okay, let's just look at the body. And then I wanted to use that in maybe, I think I used it in the mask. So if I put just a white mask in there, and let's add a filter. So I'm going to add is that a generator? I think that's a generator, not a filter. So like this position generator in this case basically creates a mask. You'll see that it's going from the top to the bottom. So it's going, let me just switch this. So it's going from white to black at the top to the bottom. And you can adjust that. So let's say I wanted to make snow only appear on the shoulders or something like that. So I could use that and push that up, and then I can combine that with other things. So if I wanted to add a painted area, like I didn't want it to appear on the badge or something, so I could just mask out an area or something like that. So you can combine these different things to get that. So I combined that position with, I think it was just a fill layer with height in it. So if I just add height to this fill, so you'll see now, well, he's beefed up. So he's got massive shoulders now. So it's just because that position is just applying to that area.
Yeah, so he hit the gym. He's all like beefed up now.
Actually, looks pretty cool like that.
Yeah. It's thick, Matt.
Yeah, I think I actually had him a little chubby belly at some point.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is the
and
opposite guy.
yeah, and just for clarification too, so you're using that position, and in case anyone who's watching who doesn't know how that's working, William, if you go back to that position, you scroll down, you can see that it's being driven by this baked information, and Substance Painter is able to bake this model information using the integrated baker.
Yeah, so it's just maps where this object is in space onto a texture. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. Okay, so here's this is on using software. I love how Marine gives me these nice categories when I'm doing the comments. So thank you, Marine. So awesome. So on the category of using software, this one is so what is not the first work for him, but okay. So this was asking like mainly we established like you're new to Substance Painter, but is this have you been doing 3D work before, or are you also pretty new to 3D as well?
Yeah, well, I've been doing 3D and digital art for 15, 20 years now. So it wasn't a completely new experience. It was just new to Substance Painter. So I think a lot of things sort of translate between those things.
Yeah, and I think again that kind of goes back to that point I was saying. It's not even it has nothing to do with really the software. It has to do with like you said, you have that 15-year experience that that you've been honing your skills and working, and all that can translate to anywhere. So whether you're using Substance Painter or another software, I mean your art and skill is what matters.
Yeah, as I said, just getting in and experimenting with these things is probably the best. And a lot of them, like the terminology, you might not know the first time you're going in, but when you learn about ambient occlusion or whatever, you'll translate that to other programs as well.
So with that said, having made this, what features would you like Substance to include that would have made this project easier or more efficient?
Well, I think the one thing that I said I would like is a layer merging thing, because that's just how I'm used to working with things like Photoshop. It's just when I'm happy with, say, like the base heights, merge all those layers in together, and so it doesn't use up processing or something. And one thing which I think I saw on last week's stream was the exporting, just adjusting that. So like you said, you could add now, export the heights and tessellation, and like just revamping some of these things, because it can be a little bit confusing going into the configurations for what to export and stuff. But I think that's all being changed, so I don't need to wait long for that.
Yeah, that's right. The export textures has been completely reworked. So we have a new system. It's quite nice, and it's really born from a lot of the feedback that all of the users have been giving us over the years in terms of letting your output. Can I configure, like you said, I want height to be an EXR, but maybe my normal I'm going to export as a PNG. You can mix and match and really further customize your outputs and gives you more control.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not sure what.
I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. Marine from marketing's on the chat. She might start hitting me up on Slack with "Stop talking," But I guess I better be quiet.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty happy with Substance Painter. Like I'm going to be using it a lot more for texturing game assets and stuff. Very exciting.
That's awesome to hear. Okay, so here, this is kind of moving towards hardware, and this one was what config did you use? So I think this is talking about like your template when you new Substance Painter project. Are you using like Metal Rough as the template, Spec Gloss? Like what's your shader setup?
So I think I was just using, I think it was just Metal Roughness, and I went from the sample project, which includes the MeatMat model. And the only thing that I really changed is that I went and I put it into 4K texture settings. And then I added a scattering layer for the fur, and then the emissive layer for the reflectors. That's all that I changed. So it was just the basic metal roughness, normal height scattering, and emissive. And I don't think I actually changed the format for any of these things.
Okay, so for I guess also with the hardware category, are you using a Wacom tablet to draw or mouse for your sculpting?
I am using the One by Wacom, which I think is the cheapest Wacom tablet available. So you don't need amazing things to be able to create art.
That's an awesome yeah, that's an awesome quote, man. Yeah, I truly believe that.
Yeah, but I think it does help a lot to use a tablet. Pressure and like, especially for the height details and stuff, really useful.
Yes. Okay. So this was maybe you like this question. So how old is your computer, and how excited are you for the prize for winning the prize?
My computer currently is ancient, and I've been dreading needing to get an upgrade. So I'm super excited. It's just going to be amazing. Like 5 times better upgrade than I could possibly ever want.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's so well deserved.
Let's plug the sponsors. Thank you, HP and NVIDIA and Wacom.
Yes, thank
And
you all
Mimikyu
very
for the
much.
3D render. Yeah, no, it's amazing. I'm extremely excited. The only upgrade I've had to my computer in 10 years is a graphics card now, which is already still dated. So yeah, it's not a super modern system, but you can still do most things in it, just really slowly.
Uh, okay, so I'm checking the question. I think that's pretty much it with our chat. So we can kind of look to start closing this out. Let's see. Why don't can you go ahead and stop your screen share? take us back to our meeting view here. And wait a second, Maureen has one more question she wants me to ask. So I don't know if I understand this one. So maybe it's bad for me. But it says we want Grail. Ask him about Grail.
Grail is my dog. He's
Oh,
a
okay.
husky.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. So your
he's,
dog. Okay. Awesome. Is he
he's lying
there?
next to me.
Oh, can you move your camera? Can we check him out? Maybe not.
He's
Maybe too
asleep.
much
I'm not
trouble.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this will work, but if anyone wants to see him, there he is. There's Grail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just hanging out and
Hello.
sleeping. Oh man, awesome dog. So cool. Oh, all right, very cool, man. So let's see. I think that's going to close out our QA. And so before we take off, I do want to let's see. I've got another slide here to show. So I do just want to remind everybody that we are continuing on with our live streams. So our next live stream is going to be on African inspiration, and we are going to showcase the creation of African masks here using the Substance tools. It's again another stream that's going to be very, very cool, very art centric. So I'm really excited for this one as well. This is happening on April 23rd, 11 a.m. PST. So just stay tuned to like all of our channels. We got our Discord server, and as well as our Twitter feed, Facebook group. We're constantly communicating all of these types of things. And whenever we have like new contests or anything coming up, so we try to communicate those things quite often. And I think that's it. I think that's going to close everything out. So, William, man, thank you so much, man. It was a real honor just to hang out with you. Like I said, man, what you did was super inspirational. That was really fun. I want to also thank everyone in the chat for hanging out with us. And yeah, so internet kind of was able to stay up for us this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. We only had one mess up so far. Yeah, it's like kind of like the every stream is some type of technical glitch. But yeah, it's getting better. Yeah. So again,
Well,
thanks
thank you so
everyone.
much.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Really awesome, and we really appreciate it. So yeah, stay safe, everyone. And hit us up online on our servers, forums. We'd love to hear from you. And take care. And we will see everyone next time.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
See ya.